What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod. We're giving you your weekly look at pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan. I am here with my co-host, Dave Martinson. Dave, happy 311 day, man.
Not a 311 fan. This day means nothing to me. But is it important for
Oh,
you?
man. Not. I mean, it's not a really important day, but it's fun to listen to 311 every once in a while. I mean, they're a chill band from the 90s and early 2000s, and yeah,
Perhaps
I enjoy them.
underrated.
51st Dates.
Right.
Are they? I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like they get like retroactive love these days. As like, remember 311? Remember when times were simpler and we can just jam out 311? You know? I don't know. I didn't experience them at the time. I just kind of like learned about this love retroactively. So I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, I think I was a little post 311 hype. I came on to like Amber, obviously, which is their biggest hit. Speakeasy was a big one for me, and 51st Dates. What Love Song was the cover that they did, which is a pretty good love song. Like pretty good cover. People like so. Yeah, shout out 311. Very timely band to be talking about. We're going to be talking about a couple music albums that came out. Musical albums, a TV, and then we're going to be doing a superhero pretty much the rest of the time. A TV show on Netflix called Umbrella Academy. We watched all of it, came out. We're going to talk if we liked it or not. Then obviously Captain Marvel was the big release of the weekend that pretty much everybody in the world is talking about. Going to be interesting to see what our takes are on that. But let's start with our guy Gesaffelstein, second album. Hyperion. Also weird. We're talking a couple weeks ago. I don't know how this happens. We talked about, I think, 3 or 4 artists that dropped their third album. And this week we're talking about 2 artists who dropped their second solo album, their sophomore solo albums. Strange.
How about that?
Serendipitous. What do you think of Gesaffelstein, though? Hyperion.
Yeah, I haven't heard his first record, Elf, from 2013. I know he kind of became like a cult figure in the EDM scene around that time. I think a big part of that was because he kind of like stopped touring and just went radio silent around 2015, and everyone was just kind of hyped about the music he was making. This, synthy house music, I guess you could say, which is kind of going against the grain as like dubstep was hitting its peak at that time, right? So he just was like this like well-known guy, but only like for EDM heads. And then he comes back last year, produced or featured on 2 songs on the Weeknd surprise My Dear Melancholy EP, which is definitely like his most mainstream, effort yet. And then I think at the end of this past year, there were some teases. Oh, new album, Gesaffelstein, get ready. And then sure enough, we get this Hyperion record. Album cover is just all black. Kind of fits his aesthetic as like a mysterious figure. And I liked it quite a bit. I don't listen to a lot of electronic music straight up these days. Obviously, it's influenced the production of various other genres all the time. So it's not like you don't hear electronic music, but just straight up EDM album, I don't usually check too many of these out. I remember like RL Grime was someone I used to follow a lot, but I kind of just fell off because I didn't really like the records. But this one, I thought it was pretty cool. It's synth. It's got those loops. It kind of reminded me of like an old school Deadmau5 album vibe, where you just kind of like get into these tracks. They just kind of vibe. But the thing with Gesaffelstein is he peppered it in with some obvious, pop attention. Weeknd feature, Pharrell feature, Haim feature. So, I thought it overall worked pretty well. It's 30 minutes, and then there's that 10-minute closer track. So it's not too tedious listen. But what do you think?
So Gesaffelstein is interesting. I was like vaguely aware of who he was just because like California and what was the other one? That Trans was a really good one that he dropped. These songs were like big at the time. People were talking about, oh, he's the future of EDM. He's gonna be this huge name that's gonna be propelling the genre forward. And then he kind of fell off. He went more into production, and he produced a couple songs off Yeezus. Actually, he produced Black Skinhead and Send It Up. And those songs sound, that whole album sounds like nothing that was coming out at the time. So even more hype was around him. And obviously it wasn't just him and Kanye, you know, Daft Punk was heavily involved in that album, but he's a very exciting artist. And then this project, I don't want to say it was disappointing, because I don't know if I had a baseline to be super disappointed with it, but I think I just didn't find it to be as like forward thinking as I expected it to be,
Sure.
and find it to be as like, wow, I've never heard something like this before. But I thought everything on there was real quality. The only song I didn't really like was the song with Haim. Let me find the name of it.
So Bad.
So Bad, which
You think it's aptly named?
Yeah. Not a great song, although I give Haim a lot of credit for doing something outside their comfort zone.
Yeah.
On that song. I mean, when I saw Haim was on this, I did a double take, thought I was hallucinating for a second. But the rest of it I thought was all quality. Especially I thought from Forever through Memora really was like a seamless transition from song to song, and they really stood out to me. I don't know though. Gesaffelstein, he's been getting all this hype with The Weeknd, and I don't know if I agree he should be receiving all the attention he has been receiving. He does kind of just remind me of this, like, I don't know, like he's like a darker Zed, I guess. Is that
interesting?
A dig, so to speak? I don't know.
Yeah, you know, well, he there are some pop collaborations like Zed on here. It's like kind of makes sense. Yeah, Forever I thought actually kind of jumped out to me because Electric Youth is featured on that, and I like learned who Electric Youth was via the Drive soundtrack, that Real Hero song, the Ryan Gosling film. Really like that as an original movie song. But yeah, I mean, I think like probably Reset, the second track, that'll probably get like EDM head attention. But really, like I think you're right. Like it doesn't have any like grand moments to like be like, here, EDM is back. EDM is like, this is the dude. Like it's just really subtle, you know. Yeah. So, and I'm sure people that are like, this is their scene, I think they probably have more thoughts than we do on it. But you know, I mean, think about the pop songs. I actually liked Pharrell on this. He's probably one of his more fun features in a while. And Lost in the Fire, I mean, that's already on our Spotify playlist. Check that out. Nostalgia Best of 2019. But I think that's like a fine weekend performance. It's pretty typical for what he does. But it does have that "fuck you" straight line, which is kind of a poor taste, I would say. Sure. But I still think that song actually is pretty cool. There's a nice bass line on that. So yeah, I mean, I think this will probably do more for people that were like really looking forward to it, I'd imagine. But yeah, I thought it was a pleasant listen.
As I was listening to this, Blade Runner 2049 kept coming into my mind, because I felt like everybody in that world is listening to Gesaffelstein all the time, especially like that scene where he's like walking, there's that huge billboard of the girl like who's like lap dancing or whatever, or strip dancing. That's the type of music that they play in those clubs. Like Gesaffelstein makes the soundtrack to the future for that. So
Gesaffelstein is just Jared Leto in Blade 49.
That's actually really funny to think about. Like, imagine if like Ryan Gosling like was like sitting there and he's like, listen to my house record, and just like,
this is why you went away for years for this.
Man. No, I think people should check it out, especially he's going to be doing a lot of festivals this summer. So if you're not aware of him, this is the time to be checking in. I think we'll probably be seeing a little bit more of him, and probably producing a lot of albums that will come out this year, at least have his hands all over those things. So check him out. Juice WRLD also dropped an album this weekend, Death Race for Love, his sophomore album, as I already mentioned. We've been talking about him a lot recently, I feel like. We know he had the collab with Future. Was it end of last year?
Last fall, yep.
Last fall. And I think we also did we review his debut album? I think we did.
We got to Goodbye and Good Riddance a little late. That originally dropped in May, but we got it a few weeks late. Once Lucid Dreams, the single from that, was blowing up. And yeah, he very quickly, I mean, he's just now 20 years old, but he very quickly became a very big figure, yet another new rap star, yet another rap figure that mixes lots of rock influences and teen angst, a lot like X and Lil Peep and Uzi. So not something that's new, but something that's very much the wave. Also, yet another rap star that's very much mixing melodic and singy flows along with SoundCloudy raps. So he kind of was an amalgamation of everything that was hot amongst like new rappers, which I think was kind of made him interesting. But at the end of the day, his songs really resonated with people. Like Lucid Dreams, 4 times platinum, like massive song. It was literally, if you do just streams, it was the most streamed song of last year that was not made by Drake.
Damn.
It's fucking massive.
It's crazy. Yeah, and this album sold really well. 165,000 in just the opening weekend. He's kind of being lauded as the next big rap artist out of Chicago. Listening to him though, you just mentioned a couple of people that he's compared to. I just kept thinking he's like the palatable X, in a sense, where he's the sad boy who talks a lot about being alone and broken relationships, and he just does it in a way that I think more people are able to listen to it and not feel put off. X is very polarizing, not only in his personal life, but also he has basically metal with like trap, and I don't know, it's an interesting mix. But I feel like Juice WRLD brings in like island sounds and electric guitars, but not to the point where you're like, oh, this is like a really heavy guitar. Just like, oh, this is a nice normal electric guitar. So I feel like he just kind of walks that middle line well, where he brings in this sad vibe, but does it in a way that more people feel like they want to listen to.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because speaking to that fame, he also immediately got very rich, like $3 million Interscope deal last year. Immediately, very famous, very successful, and that really frames a lot of the content on this. It's a trope, but it's I'm rich yet I'm still sad. That's Juice WRLD right now. But also, like my thought for the second album was, oh, Juice WRLD, yeah, he's still sad. Like he's still not doing great. Sometimes it sounds like still self-medicating. I'm still worried about that. Please seek out help if you need it, man. But ultimately, he can like have those songs where he like speaks to his demons, and then also do a ridiculous song like Syphilis, which is just this raunchy, misogynistic SoundCloud rap song, So the fact that there's actually a fair amount of variety on this record, and he actually spoke to this, and Hit Boy spoke to this, who produced a bunch of the records on this. They spoke to Billboard about this, that the Interscope A&R also tried to influence this. They wanted to show a lot of other sounds and show that Juice WRLD has a lot more versatility. And, I still think this album is too long, 70 plus minutes.
21 songs and an interlude, bro. I mean,
definitely started spinning wheels at the end. And again, it's not that any of this is like egregiously bad. Like someone like X, who was releasing 20-minute albums, there were songs in that just were like offensive to your ears because they were just sonically like jumbled and ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But Juice WRLD, this is all well constructed, well mixed music. But I still think he started to spin his wheels and he kind of ran out of things to say. But on the other hand, he does reiterate the same themes in various ways all the time. So I think he can kind of get to his point in various different ways. So I think this is probably, I think it's a successful debut. Obviously, financially and streaming wise, it'll be huge for him. But I think critically, like it's probably as good as we could have expected. Because I mean, right from the first album, and obviously a lot of EPs before that, but that first album, we got a lot there. And like more than anything though, it was like, here's potential. Like this album is not amazing, but there's a lot of potential here. And I think Death Race for Love is just kind of the natural progression of that, where yes, there's a lot of potential here and he's proving that he can do lots of different things, but I still want to hear more focus and refinement, because he even mentioned that he doesn't really write. And I'm like, you don't need to do the Migos thing, man, and just hop in the booth and show off your talent. Like you can put some more work in this. I mean, he said they made him and Hit Boy in Hollywood made like 20 something songs in like a 72-hour period. And every track on this album was from that session. Some of them were beats were constructed from producers older otherwise, but like everything was right there except for Robbery, which was as old as the songs from last year. So I'd like to hear what he can do with a little more fine tuning, I guess. But I mean, what do you think?
No, I agree. And I think I actually didn't check who if he had a major producer with him on this, but I think if he could find a producer and creator who he feels can kind of rein him in and inspire him in a sense. I mean, uh, the sad boy lane is one that is very popular right now, but is it one that is going to be sustainable for multiple albums? I think there's always going to be an element into his work, but I think he's going to need to start to find new inspiration if he wants to continue to rise. And I think he has, I mean, a ton of potential. These songs are so catchy. And, you mentioned like his gift with melody and to write these, or not to write, I guess, but to come up with these really creative hooks and like songs like Ring Ring or Who Shot Cupid. Even though I was like, this lyrical content is kind of lame, I was like, still like, I'm enjoying this. Like, I'm enjoying this song. So I think he has a lot of potential. I agree. I want to see him work with somebody who maybe inspires him or pushes him into finding that next level for himself. You mentioned Syphilis. I'm guessing that's probably not your favorite track on this. What are the songs that stood out to you?
Yeah. There was, speaking of the production once more, there was some cool beat switch ups on here towards the end. The problem is it's a long record, so you kind of forget about them. But like the Bee's Knees, I thought that was really cool halfway through. There's a few other moments like that. On Maze, he had I think a really witty bar about Pro Tools and Logic. As someone who edits audio every week for this podcast, I appreciated that line. The songs on Rap Caviar right now, apart from the singles, are Make Believe and Fast. And Fast is a song that I listened to a few times, and I'm like, part of me thinks his hook just stinks. But again, it's so damn catchy, And ultimately, I think that's what wins in the end. And like there were songs on here that it's like, man, you're telling me you're really sad, yet these 808s are hitting really hard right now, man. I don't know if this mixes well, In the meantime, I'll just ignore what you're saying and enjoy the beat, whatever. I like the lead single Robbery. I think that one's pretty cool, and which makes sense. It's in the vein of the older songs he recorded it with. Bee's Knees, like I said, they're Hear Me Calling, the other single, I guess is pretty cool. That's definitely a little slower, more ballady. But I think anyone who was a fan before, you can find a bunch of different songs on here. What do you think? What else did you like?
I already mentioned Who Shot Cupid and Ring Ring, especially the guitars in Ring Ring pulled me in the beginning, and then it was just so catchy. One of the few features on it too, with Clever on that. Feeling had this like island sound to it, which I thought he melded pretty good with his voice and what he was saying. And Hear Me Calling, I think, is a standout on this for sure. So there's a lot here, which I think we talked about using long albums as a way of getting streaming numbers up, but I think, like you mentioned, he also just wasn't very focused on this, so he had a lot to put out there and put it out there. So you can find something if you enjoy Juice WRLD or even just hip hop in general. I think you can find something on this album to enjoy. We recommend it, and we'll put a track or two onto our Spotify best of, which you can search Nowstalgia Best of 2019 on Spotify and follow us there. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for our YouTube channel. Help us grow and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. We appreciate all the love. All right, superhero time. Let's start with the non-Marvel superheroes in the Umbrella Academy. The Stephen Blackman, Jeremy Slater, the showrunners for this, a Netflix series, which it seems like it's going to have a second season. I didn't check if that got picked up already, but the way that it ended, it was 10 episodes, an hour-long episode or around that for each one. Follows this group of adopted superheroes who were all born on the same day in some like weird chance, like women becoming pregnant out of nowhere situation, adopted by this weird guy who raises them and tries to get the most out of their powers, but they drift apart and now they're adults and present, and all the family dynamics are there and they have to come together to save the world from the apocalypse.
Yep.
Did I summarize that?
Yeah, pretty much. Steve Blackman, one of the showrunners, he was Emmy nominated for Fargo season 2 and actually won a WGA for that. So definitely a smart hand at the wheel, I would say. But you mentioned you assume it got picked up. All the scuttlebutt, you know how Netflix likes to tell us these things without showing their work, but all scuttlebutt is that Umbrella Academy was very well watched. I mean, we're getting to this a little late due to our schedules, but it came out back on February 15th. And you check like ComScore traffic and web traffic, and like people are checking this show out, but it hasn't gotten greenlit yet. And I'm wondering the reason that might be. This was not produced by Netflix. Netflix did not make this at all. They just obviously distributed it. Universal Cable Productions made this, aka Universal, NBC. I wonder if Netflix just will say, "Nah, we're not going to renew this," because they don't actually control it or own it. That's obviously a topic that'll come up once we hear more. But they greenlit the show back in 2017. Since then, we know they've stopped shows that they didn't really control, even successful ones like American Vandal. So that's been on my mind since I researched that and learned that. But either way, Umbrella Academy is coming at an interesting time because Netflix obviously officially canned all of their Defenders universe show. The Jessica Jones season 3 will come out soon. That'll be the end of it. They're all done. Whether they live on Hulu, we'll find out, or Disney Plus, we'll find out one day. But in the meantime, we have the Umbrella Academy on Netflix, and it's not a Marvel or DC property, so it's inherently not as famous or well known. And I was immediately taken with the fact that they're so clearly influenced by the X-Men. I mean, Umbrella Academy, you have all these kids learning to harness their powers, this rich, wealthy head of household, aka Professor Xavier. Like, there's a lot of obvious analogs and spoilers for the whole season. But as we progress through the show, and once we learn more about Vanya and what actually happens with her, I'm like, oh, this is Dark Phoenix. I know the story already. Like, it's so obvious.
Yeah, actually, I wrote down X-Men meets Haunting of Hill House. Feels like the lane they went with. You know, this family that's brought back together after all these like issues that pulled them apart from growing up, and they have to overcome these family dynamics to, you know, solve some sort of crisis in a way. And yeah, the X-Men parallels are so blatant. It's definitely out there. And I mean, this is based off a comic book series, so I'm sure
relatively contemporary series too. So it's
2007, I think.
Yeah, it's actually still running. It's like a bunch of like limited runs, so not that many issues. But yeah, I mean, watching the show, I think it looks cool. The saturation it stands out. But the world building was pretty strong. And what's cool is, as you said, we're just kind of plopped into the series as adults. We get some flashbacks of them as kids, but we're really picking up in the present day. And that lack of an origin story is definitely welcome. We'll talk more about origin stories in a minute for Captain Marvel, but I like that choice. I think ultimately my thing with the show is, while I enjoy the show, I liked a bunch of the characters and performances, I did think that it was just too long. The story, I think any smart, alert viewer can kind of grasp where this plot's going and how it will roughly end several hours before it gets there. And unfortunately, started to spin its wheels in the middle. This was an issue that really hurt the Marvel Netflix shows. And it was a pretty constant criticism. And if Umbrella Academy was 8 episodes, heck, maybe even 6, like, I think it would have been a lot tighter. That being said, what we got, I still liked it. I'm still happy I, watched the whole thing. Good fight choreography. Like I said, there's some good actors. I mean, I really liked like Cameron Britton and Mary J. Blige in like supporting roles. I thought they were really, really good. So overall, I think it's pretty enjoyable, but definitely some structure issues, which unfortunately has been a theme with any superhero TV these days.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The pacing of the show was off. The first like 4 or 5 episodes, I was kind of like, okay, we get this. Like, these all could have been a half hour and we would have gotten where we needed to go. I did feel like the show started to really catch its stride near the end, though. And I think what helped that was putting these characters together finally. Because in the beginning, it was jumping around from there's 7 children plus,
and one's dead.
Yeah, and one's dead. And then you also have the 2 from the whatever the like people controlling the timelines is.
Commission.
Yep. Yeah, the commission, right. So you have like 9 characters you're following who all have these different stories developed to different lengths. And it's just so kind of disjointed in a way. Like you start getting one story, then it jumps to, you know, you're getting to Vanya, jumps to Klaus, jumps to number one. Like you're just kind of all over the place. So when they finally start coming together, it's like, okay, here we go. And things really start happening. You know, Vanya starts to, you know, explore her powers, and that's really interesting. Although Ellen Page, man, I mean, I wish she had a better character to work with. I feel like she was so mopey for pretty much the whole season, and then just became this like otherworldly power. It's like, damn, like
right. And again, like it's so obvious what's happening to her, but she doesn't have anything to do. And like, oh, this guy's totally good at manipulating you. That's just an educated guess, but I'm pretty sure that's where it's going. Then you learn it. Then she learns it. Like it just, it's too thin to be drawn out as much as it is. And like Ellen Page, I mean, I just started thinking, I was like, man, where's Ellen Page been? Like we got Juno, obviously, Inception, and X-Men. That's really it. Like, why hasn't there been more Ellen Page? And unfortunately, this also feels like a bit of a miss because, like, once she starts being all like, you know, evil white violin Vanya, like, it's not like she's doing that much,
right?
You know?
Like, what is there to that character other than, you know, we'll talk about this with Captain Marvel, but like, she's basically like a god at that point. Like, no one can touch her. I don't know, kind of crazy. You know, one thing I also found, I agree, like the fight sequences are great, the musical cues are great, the music in this just in general,
those great set pieces, yeah,
so good. But it started to feel so formulaic. At one point, I was watching, and my girlfriend Julianne came in, and I said, "Oh, in like 5 minutes, there's going to be like a fight scene with like a music cue. Just wait for it." It was, I think it was the penultimate episode when they're in the bowling alley or something like that. And sure enough, like, yeah, it was awesome. SATURDAY, and like all the shootings. It was great. And running down the bowling alley lanes, like it looked so cool, and it looked very comic booky, which I thought was excellent. But it just did feel almost like too predictable at points where I was like not as interested because of that.
Yeah, I mentioned Cha-Cha and Hazel's characters I liked. I thought the relationship, especially Hazel's character, there's really well drawn throughout, and they get a lot to do, so that makes sense. I also thought Klaus was an obvious standout. I thought Robert Sheen was really good in that role, but I mean,
great last name.
he talks to dead people, and he stays not sober to avoid that. Like high concept as fuck. Great, like we all can get on with that. That's good. Also has PTSD. Like there's a lot going on with him. He was good. We mentioned Vanya. Luther, you know, played by Tom Hopper, aka Dickon from Game of Thrones. I thought he was fine. Again, he was kind of like we kind of know he's kind of a straight arrow. Like and like also I'm not even one to like guess what's gonna happen. I never really think about that much, but I'm like, seems like he probably has romantic feelings for Allison. Yeah, sure enough, he does. Yep. Okay. Took me 4 more hours to find out for sure. Allison, same thing. Like, I think she had like probably the most wasted potential. I don't think she was bad, but almost too melodramatic for my liking. I thought we could have taken a different direction. But I think the clear weakest link was Diego. Like, like Eudora, his ex-girlfriend, dies really quick. He doesn't really have anything else going on with him, and apparently that was actually a change from the comics. That Theodora character, but yeah, I thought Diego, he just seemed really headstrong and not really that interesting, and also probably the least powerful too. So
yeah, but you didn't even mention my guy number 5, Aidan Gallagher. I thought he was actually really good. And obviously a very meaty role, but to be, you know, alongside all these adult actors, I thought he really held his own and played that character great. What'd you think of Mary J. Blige?
Definitely not Mudbound.
No,
obviously. It's just campy, but it kind of fit her character. I think what she was doing, so that was cool.
Yeah,
not something I expected from her. A more actiony role, or more cutthroat role, but she's definitely making some cool choices as an actress, I would say. You know, it's weird. Some of these scenes where time would stop for some characters or some events or motions, and then other people would walk through like the pause scene, reminded me a lot of Legion, especially because like I feel like the visuals would look really cool in those scenes. So, I mean, again, like there's a lot of like cool influences and cool moments. And this was really condensed, I think, and maybe some other script choices were made. think this could have been like a really, really strong, tight season. That being said, again, I still liked it. I still think there's plenty to like about it. And if this is your kind of thing, you like genre stuff, if you like, there's some noir elements, or if you like really out there stuff like time travel, I mean, I think this can really deliver. But it's funny, I've seen it compared to Doom Patrol, which is the new show, live action show on DC Universe streaming service, which is funny. It has like Timothy Dalton in it. It has Brendan Fraser in it. Either way, it's another DC. It's a team, and it's actually Doom Patrol is getting more love than Umbrella Academy for actually going further with the weirdness. If you think about Umbrella Academy, they almost play it too safe. I mean, we have a talking chimp butler, and Luther is literally an ape man.
Yep.
And yet it still felt like we kind of just went down the middle with it, you know?
Yeah, and a mom who's a robot.
Right.
I mean, just so out there. Yeah, also, one more shout out. Kate Walsh, who plays the handler. She's been on like Grey's Anatomy. I think it was The Bad Judge or something like that was her other show. I thought she was really good, and every time she's on screen, she played that part really well. So overall, good performances. Just maybe the show could use some fine tuning, some tightening up. All right, jumping to a superhero that we've been anticipating for a while, because it's interesting because I feel like we're anticipating her for two reasons. First, Marvel female superhero that's leading a movie. But also, this is really the bridge to Endgame, which I think is, we talked about most anticipated movies. It's up there for almost everybody who's followed Marvel and their run up to Avengers Endgame. So this was directed by Anna Boden, Ryan Fleck, done a lot of like indie movies, I believe, but
yep. Most well known for Mississippi Grind, which was an A24 movie from 2015. So well liked directing duo, and kind of fits that more traditional Marvel mode where we'll get like lesser known directors like a Peyton Reed who did Ant-Man, for example, and just kind of craft them onto our vision. You know, this is not, and we'll get to this more, but this is not like a Taika Waititi or Ryan Coogler where it's like, here's the check and here's the ball. Just go pitch.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't quite get to do that, but I still think, you know, it makes more sense in terms of like the traditional thing, but an interesting choice, I would say.
It was an interesting choice, but they still delivered, because this movie made close to, I think it made over 450 million worldwide, 150 million domestic, I believe. Definitely a success. You got Brie Larson heading this thing, Samuel L. Jackson de-aged, Jude Law, Ben Mendelsohn, Annette Bening, which I was also like, Annette Bening? Pretty crazy that she's in a Marvel movie. You got all these pieces, and a character who is, I don't want to say relatively unknown. She's one of the oldest Marvel characters, but maybe not as popular as the tier that's been leading recently. But it's still the first female superhero. I was like, this thing is going to be a hit, like no matter what. I actually left feeling pretty disappointed in this movie. I don't think I was disappointed to the point of saying it's a bad movie. I still think it's good and watchable and enjoyable. But I did find myself feeling like they left a lot on the table. Did you have that same experience?
I did. I immediately realized that it wasn't Spider-Man Homecoming. It wasn't Black Panther. Two movies where their protagonists were introduced in Captain America Civil War. Captain Marvel had to set up everything from the start for the character, and as a result really play like a more traditional origin story, one we haven't gotten since Ant-Man and Doctor Strange. And given that we've since seemingly moved past that, going back to the more traditional framing of one of these stories was disappointing to me, just because the whole movie is about doing the origin, and even if I separate that, this movie unfortunately felt like it had to serve so many masters, and thus was pretty overstuffed. Like, again, has to do the whole Carol Danvers origin story front to back. Yep. Has to be set in 1995 and be a throwback movie of sorts. It has to be the earliest MCU movie to date, apart from Tony Stark flashbacks, and thus set up the Tesseract and the origins of the modern Shield with Coulson and Fury.
Ooh.
Also has to give us the Kree-Skrull War from the start.
Captain America was definitely the earliest set. Marvel movie?
Oh yeah, good point. Earliest modern one, like
Yeah.
like he gets frozen in time. Earliest modern one, um, good catch, and also has to deal with being the first female-led story in the MCU,
Yep.
and also, as you mentioned, has to at least tertiarily tie into Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
So this had a lot going on, and if I think maybe all those parts would have worked better if it wasn't doing the strict normal origin, but because it was, I just feel like it felt a little cluttered to me. I think there's a lot of great moments, especially I think the movie really picks up once we touch down on Earth and really get it going into Act 2, but it starts slow. And I usually don't notice that on a first watch with these movies. Usually when I watch again, I'll be down. I'm like Infinity War, just rewatch it. Didn't like it as much as when I saw it in the theater. But even Captain Marvel, the first time, I'm like, this is dragging a little bit.
Yep.
And like, you can just kind of see the skeleton. That's disappointing.
Yeah, and on top of all those things you mentioned in terms of what it needs to do, it also kind of acts as a Nick Fury like origin story in a sense
Yes, it
too. You
does.
get a lot of like how he became to be the person who brings the Avengers together, how he gets his eye patch, like all that stuff comes about. Which actually I didn't mind that. Samuel L. Jackson I thought was awesome in this movie. He was really fun. Definitely had the most humor to work with in this, and beyond that, it felt like this movie, I guess him and Mendelsohn were like the two having fun. The rest felt kind of serious to me, especially Brie Larson. And this isn't the I'm not trying to say, oh, it would have been better if she smiled more. No, but I really, you have someone as charming and delightful as Brie Larson, and she kind of got stuck in that Vanya role from Umbrella Academy, where she was very serious and confused the whole time. So she didn't really get to be herself. She was always trying to piece things together.
And that's the thing. That's I think the fault of the script and the trope that is amnesiac lead. She's so confused. We don't really get to learn more about her. She has to learn about herself along the way,
right?
And it can be a bit of a slog as a result. And like again, like you nailed it. Like Brie Larson, she won Best Actor for Room. She's really good at handling meaty stuff. And I think you get more of that at the end. But in the beginning, it's just kind of really, I don't know, just plot moving, it's just, and obviously this will get compared to Wonder Woman because unfortunately these are the only two movies you can compare for this sort of thing. And I think Wonder Woman looks way better because Patty Jenkins definitely had more visual flair for it. And that's obvious. Captain Marvel suffers from a lot of the Marvel issues with lighting. And I think while there was a lot of nice color, especially in space, I think the overwhelming or usual Marvel house style that usually results from shooting in Atlanta, Georgia, you still notice that with this. But Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, I think, kind of diverge from there. And interesting, I like choices that both of them made. Like Captain Marvel, to its credit, there is no sexualizing of the character at all.
No.
And there is no romantic subplot, even a token one. I think those should not be understated. That being said, I think Wonder Woman kind of made the character more engaging right away, but also Wonder Woman briefly was shown in BVS. So not apples to oranges. But yeah, Brie Larson, unfortunately, she felt like she was handcuffed a little bit in this, which is, again, disappointing given the caliber of talent she is. Yeah,
and I think that again, this movie was good, but it had so much to do, and it felt like they really had to like stuff it in there, and that made things feel like it was very like in your face or too blatant, not subtle enough. Even like the running through line of Brie Larson's this woman with these amazing powers, but she can't control her emotions. Like, the most stereotypical, like, women are too emotional thing, which I get the point in the end was to be like, well, she's actually not, and she's able to control herself just fine, whether she's experiences her emotions or doesn't. But it felt almost like you couldn't find a different way to maybe like put that like feminist, like girl power message in there other than everybody being like, you're too emotional all the time, or even like the 90s stuff I felt like was very like in your face. She finds this mannequin and steals the clothes and has a very clean Nine Inch Nails t-shirt,
Very
similar to
clean,
her
very new.
clean, very clean Guns N' Roses t-shirt. That was her like beloved t-shirt for going out to the bars in her flashbacks. So just really interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was the Nirvana drop in particular. It was
Right.
pretty yikes.
Yeah.
Get it, we get it, guys, we get it.
I didn't mind it, but it didn't really make sense why all of a sudden she would have this music playing there. I just wanted to put Come As You Are, which is an amazing song. I've listened to it like 20 times since I watched the movie. Just a Girl, that drop was awesome, and
No
that
doubt,
fight
yeah.
scene near the end. Did you say No Doubt to name the band, or just saying No Doubt it was awesome?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so did you feel like those things were in your face, or was that something I just kind of
Yeah, well, I think
walked away with?
the movie jumps tones, and that can kind of get in the way with that message you're talking about, where it's like a very serious, important message that should be in the movie feels like it's heavy-handed in one moment, and then we have Ben Mendelsohn with a Slurpee of some kind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just chewing scenery. So like in the beginning, it's very dour in the beginning, that first act, which again I thought was pretty slow. And then you get like those 90s flashback scenes that are different, especially the singing scenes, you know? So it did feel like it jumped around a little bit, but I think by the end it started to really hone in. I think really by the time you learn that Mendelsohn as Talos is in fact a good guy, not a bad guy, I think that reveal, that twist works very well and really reminded me of the Vulture twist in Homecoming, a twist that you didn't really see coming. And then once you hear like, wow, that was smart. That was well done. Especially for me, like the meta angle, I was like, oh, Mendelsohn, man, he's on quite the run. Orson Krennic in Rogue One, the Ready Player One guy, whoever, the Sheriff of Nottingham and Robin Hood. Man, he loves being a villain. Good for him. Get that money. He's going to do it again in Marvel. Oh, wait, he's a good guy? Oh, and he's funny? Hell yeah. I thought he was, him and Sam Jackson were probably my favorite performances.
Definitely.
And I think really where that twist happens really kind of accentuates the movie hitting its stride. But unfortunately, it had to do a lot of table setting in the beginning, which makes it stops it from being a great movie.
Yeah, I agree. Mendelsohn was fantastic, and I feel like all these things kind of keep it down. And I think another thing that kind of keeps it down, this is more of a just a creation of the Marvel universe in general, but she's too powerful like to really be an interesting character when she does discover all of her powers. So by the end, I mean, she basically just like, fuck all this, and just flies into space and destroys like a warcraft. Like I was like, damn, like she's so strong that I don't know if I'm really interested to see what more this character can do, because I don't know how there could really be a conflict. Now, she's obviously gonna have a huge part in Endgame, and Thanos seems like he could be a worthy opponent of her. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they kind of tie all these things in. What did you think of the answer that was given the other day by, I forgot who it was from Marvel, but they were talking about why hasn't Nick Fury called her before, like when Ultron was, you know, about to end the world, or Loki in the first Avengers, right. And they were like, well, how do you know he hasn't? It's like, so you're telling me that she just sometimes responds and sometimes is like, nah, not right now?
Yeah, good question, I guess. I feel like those are things you just kind of have to leave at the door, you know? I mean, the Skrulls are a big part of this movie. The Skrulls have long been theorized as perhaps being the next big bad post Thanos. I mean, obviously, people have had years to theorize about what's next for Marvel after Endgame, right? And like some like secret invasion-esque storyline with the Skrulls has long been thrown out there. But the problem with that is like where the Skrulls, obviously they shapeshift, which I think is really cool in the movie and done well. Really, I think enlightens the action sequences once they get to Earth. But if the Skrulls turn out to be like, oh, remember Hawkeye in all those movies? Yeah, he was a Skrull for like half that time. Right. And it's like, it's just some real tinfoil hat shit that I don't know if we can do again after Winter Soldier's like, actually, Hydra is S.H.I.E.L.D. Fooled ya. Like, you know, I don't know if we can like take it to that extreme and be like, yo, Ant-Man actually was a bad guy this whole time. He just happened to be a funny bad guy. Like, I don't know if that would work.
Right.
So yeah, I think you just gotta like you gotta just ignore it. Like it's pager tech, bro. It takes a while to get to. I don't know. Think of what you need to. Or Captain Marvel's like, nah, I saw it. They got Tony. It's fine. Nah, you just
Yeah.
gotta roll with it, man.
Did you like the post credit scenes?
Um, I was surprised to actually see a scene that feels like it lifted right out of Endgame.
Yeah.
Actually show that. Not really a surprise, we knew that was happening. You can watch the Endgame trailer and see a clear spot where a person was walking in the line with the other people and they edited it out. It was clearly Captain Marvel. But still cool to see. So cool to see it. And obviously they always have the funny stinger, the one with the cat throwing up Tesseract.
Yeah.
That was funny.
The cat was funny the whole time. I
yeah,
loved the
for
whole
sure.
cat.
And I think the payoff with the cat actually being more than just a cat worked really well. Really, I mean, the biggest laugh out loud moment in my theater, anyway. Some of the early Entertainment Weekly like official photos, they had a Law and Larson and their whole team walking and like meeting face to face with Ronan. And I remember when they announced it's like, oh, Jomon Hansu and Lee Pace are back as Ronan and Korath. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. They weren't that great in Guardians, but they're Kree, and why not? I like those actors. And yeah, they don't get to do anything. Nope. Ronan is a glorified cameo, and frankly, I feel bad for Lee Pace. He's a very good looking man, and they're like, nah, bitch, you're gonna be blue again. And you're gonna say like 3 words, and you're gonna be happy about it.
Well, they pretty much set him up to be the Captain Marvel sequel, villain. So,
well, I don't know if they would do that though, because we know he dies in Guardians 1. Right. So like, what's the point? I think if anything, he serves as like to tell that, oh wait, the Kree and Jan Rog, they're actually bad because they're working with Ronan. You know how bad he got. I think that's kind of the point of that. Well, and like I like there's that one moment where like Ronan asks Jude Law's team is like about some information, and Korath's about to tell him, and then Law cuts him off. That's supposed to hint that Korath's going to go more extreme and work for Ronan and set up where they are in Guardians 1. It's very subtle. That's like for like the real heads, Yeah. But ultimately, I feel like they were just kind of just there for longtime fans of the series and little else. I was actually very disappointed that Gemma Chan wasn't better. I mean, obviously, anyone who didn't know about her now loves her after Crazy Rich Asians. She was Astrid. Yep. And I'm like, oh, Gemma Chan, let's go. And at least she got to fly the ship at the end and do a little something. But man, she didn't do much in the beginning. I was let down by that.
Wait, I want to go back to Ronan, though, because he says the line like, I'll be back for the girl or whatever it is. And I really think that whether it's going to be him chasing her down while she's, flying through trying to figure out things in space, that there will be something related to that. I don't think he'll end up, obviously she will end up killing him, but maybe like popping back up.
The problem is, I'm pretty sure Captain Marvel 2, which we definitely know will happen, it was guaranteed even before the movie was a massive success. Captain Marvel 2 almost assuredly is going to take place after Avengers Endgame, right? Ronan's already dead by then.
Well, why does it have to, though? I mean, she's out in space. You have, 20 years of time that they could film between?
I don't think they're going to do anything pre-Endgame. Endgame's a clear shift in how the MCU functions. Gotcha. Marvel, Panther, Spider-Man, Strange, those are our new pillars, right? There's no way they're going to go back. I mean, they're probably already doing that with the Black Widow movie, So I really don't think they would go back and do like this one set in 2000. No, I really don't think that makes too much sense, because you're putting too much stock in having Captain Marvel come in for Endgame, come in out of the bullpen, so to then go back. Like, oh, actually, no, this happens before that. I think it's just unnecessarily confusing to the audience.
Right. I can see that. It could make sense. Any last thoughts on Endgame? I feel like we didn't really talk about Jude Law. How did you feel about his performance?
I mean, I love Jude Law. Jude Law's awesome, and he's good in this too. And they didn't make him blue, which is actually explained because the Kree, less pure blood Kree look less blue. And that's all the explanation I need. I liked him. He starts off as more of like an Obi-Wan-esque figure, old trainer. And then he becomes the bad guy. It's funny, they were keeping his character name close to the vest up until like the week before the movie came out, because Jan Rog's pretty well known as a Captain Marvel villain. So I guess they didn't want to spoil that. But again, once you get halfway through, you realize Mendelsohn's a good guy. You know how the rest plays out. But I liked him. I thought he was effective. Annette Bening, though, I thought she was just kind of there. They just need someone to play that role. I mean, they've done this countless times in Marvel because they just can throw checks. I mean, remember Glenn Close is in Guardians 1, and Gary Shandling is in Winter Soldier. like in these thankless parts. So it happens all the time. But yeah, I like Jude Law. I thought he was cool.
Yeah,
and he's not dead, which I think is cool for future potential.
Definitely. I've seen people kind of saying Annette Bening's role was a bit confusing because she basically had 3 different roles. Whatever her human name was, Marvel, and the AI,
Supreme Intelligence.
Yeah, Supreme Intelligence. But I actually didn't find it that way. I felt it was pretty easy to understand that, and I thought, though there's issues with the script being unnecessarily, I think, confusing at points, that was not one of them for me. I don't know. Any last thoughts on this movie?
Well, to that point, apparently there was a deleted scene. This is just conjecture. We don't have it confirmed, but apparently there was a deleted scene of Jan Rog going to Supreme Intelligence. And remember, it shows you who you respect
most admire.
And in that scene, Jan Rog sees himself. Thought that was a cool visual, but it's funny because in the comics, you can just Google Supreme Intelligence. You'll see the Wikipedia article. It's just this big green head with like these tubes and shit, some really out there shit,
some Wizard of Oz shit.
And Marvel often will change things to make them more palatable to the tone of their universe. I think of Ego in Guardians 2. He does not look like Kurt Russell in the comics, but
doesn't it?
Yeah, I didn't find it confusing either.
No, we're a month out from Endgame now.
April 26th, end of April.
So about 6 weeks out. So, Captain Marvel probably has a 2-week run before us hits theaters and dominates conversation. Cause it seems like that's going to be very good. And then we're on to Endgame.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Disney is also releasing Dumbo at the end of the month between 2 of its heaviest hitters. Interesting choice, I have to say.
Yeah, especially because Dumbo looks pretty good. Big cast too.
It does, but I'm also worried about its box office potential because it's from the 30s and doesn't have the nostalgia of Beauty and the Beast,
Yeah.
So interesting calendar decision. We'll see how it turns out.
We got a lot to talk about, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, wherever you're listening to this, so that you can get all the podcasts as they come out. What do we got next week, Dave?
So next week, this week, Wednesday, the 13th, Triple Frontier is out on Netflix. It's been playing in a few theaters around the country the past week, 2 weeks or so, in New York and LA. It's on Netflix for everyone. Ben Affleck, Oscar Isaac, Charlie Hunnam, Garrett Hedlund, Pedro Pascal, heist action movie. The reviews are actually pretty strong. So hyped as fuck for that. We'll talk about that one. 2 other movies come out in the theaters traditionally. Captive State, which is an interesting sci-fi movie with John Goodman that I'm very intrigued by. And also The Aftermath, a movie that me and you are both intrigued for the meta. It's the union of Keira Knightley plays someone not in the 21st century, and Jason Clarke's wife leaves him. 2 of my favorite tropes in modern day movie making. And of course, Arrested Development, the final half of season 5 comes out on Netflix on Fridays. We'll talk about all of season 5 because we didn't actually talk about the first half last year.
Yeah.
So good on us for waiting, I guess. No music that I know of yet. We'll see if that changes.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be something.
But stuff always comes up. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and especially on YouTube, because there's always more coming.
Always more. We'll see you next week.